Hey, my name is Ron Carucci. I'm a author, thought leader, and managing partner at the firm Navalin. Please catch me on this week's episode of the Jesse T Show.
The mighty, the powerful Ron Carucci joins the show today. How you doing, brother?
Jesse, how are you, my friend? Good to see you.
Likewise, man. And obviously, like you said, the memo, we're wearing similar colored shirts, and I think it's a great start to the Monday, man. Two Italian dudes.
It's two Italian dudes wearing red shirts. What's odd about that?
Right. It's like we're going to go take over, like we're Rome or something. So, brother, great to have on the show, man. I'm excited to dive into you and your journey. Give us a little high-level overview of who you are and what you do.
So I spend my days traipsing alongside leaders who are in the throes of some really messy change. They either got themselves in a ditch or they have some audacious aspiration they want to achieve for their company, or they're trying to rise up in their own company to a bigger job. They're trying to launch a new product. They're trying to take over Asia. They're trying to convince their organization of some new important transformation that has to happen. Whatever it is, our job is to craft that journey for them. Is to sort of lay out a pathway that considers, the organizational issues, the relationship issues, the inner narrative issues of our own stories, the things that are going to get in the way of that change or the things that are going to accelerate it. And our job is to accompany them over the years, typically, it's going to take to reach where they want to reach or get out of where they want to get out of. I've been doing that for 30 years. We started our firm 17 years ago. This is our 17th birthday this month. Crazy when I think about how long that's gone. Before that, I spent a lot of my time inside big companies. I was with a big consulting firm before that. And then, what I realized after 10 or 15 years inside companies was the same behavior that got me paid well outside got me in trouble inside. So I realized, okay, well, if I'm going to have to live out my passion for organizations, it's probably going to have to be by not being part of one. And I found my home and my voice, being the outsider to organizations and being the one that has to sort of sit in and say the things that nobody else will say and offer the points of view that people are too afraid to raise. And that's been a great journey for my career ever since.
Beautiful, brother. So very similar in terms of being kind of a rebel in terms of, getting out of corporate and running my own thing. But, there was a lot of experience that you had before, these last happy anniversary, 17 years. What was it through your trajectory that called you to this work? Was it something that you felt that needed a change? Was it something that, you had a bad experience and wanted to make it right? Like, what was it like the path that got you to today?
I'll take you back to Germany in 1985. I began my career in the arts. So I began my career in a very bizarre other world in the art. And I unfortunately or fortunately learned very quickly that I bored easily. So my friends would all be like, wow, you have this great job. I'd be like, I have to do the same thing 8 times a week for how long? So I took a job with a company that sort of mixed media and arts with training and teaching and a broader set of activities. So I left New York City, went on the road for 5 years. And while I lived in Europe for 3 years. And the company that I worked for had a contract with the US military and State Department. And we were in Dachau doing a workshop. Now, back in the mid 80s, this is before Germany has been reunified. So there's East and West still. And they didn't have the words diversity and inclusion, but if they did, that this workshop we were doing in the chapel at Dachau, that's what this workshop would have been called. And it was lost on nobody that here we are sitting with military, civilian, German, American, people from the East and West in a room that's a symbol of love, at a place that's a symbol of hate. So that's lost on nobody. In the middle of this, a young soldier, probably wasn't much older than me, stood up and he said, I'm just so tired of being trained to hate. Mm. And I remember thinking very vividly, how did something we do up here make him think that? That was, first of all, fascinating to me. But I was just fascinated that he was willing to share that. And so I wanted to know more. So after we processed the conversation as a whole group, I asked him to go out for beer because you're in Munich and that's what you do, right? So we went out and we spent hours. I was just fascinated by what he had to say, what he was learning, what he was wrestling with in his life. And I think that was the point. I don't know that I named it that way, Jesse, but it was the arc in my career where I realized, telling great stories is really interesting, but entering people's story and helping them tell their own story better, that's cool. And I would probably never get bored doing that. So that, I think, was the beginning of my transition to a very different career as an organizational psychologist and a leadership development executive coach, where I get to enter different stories every day and help people make them better.
There was a lot there, and there was one part that jumped out to me that resonated with. You talked about doing the same thing 8 times a week or whatever it was, and it was you weren't lit up by it, so to speak, and you needed a change. Have you heard of human design before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you a manifesting generator? Do you know?
I don't remember the archetypes in
Yeah.
that model, so I don't know that I'm fast enough to be able to tell you that.
Yeah, basically it's just saying that you need to be lit up by things. You need your energy to go. It could be multiple different directions. You're not always just doing one thing. I was interested to see if you had heard of this before, because it's played a role in my life, and it gave me an aha moment. It was like, wow, this is actually really part of who I am, and I'm glad I found this. But you talk about psychological, and are you a student of like Carl Jung? Like, do you have any kinds of thought leaders that you pull from, and what are some of the systems and some of the things that you use in shaping some of these people's stories as you get into these cultures?
Yeah, so I mean, I think my clinical work was always around family systems of origin. So there's always this Jungian stuff in there. There's Freud's in there. There's all kinds of family systems architects who understand your origin story. I do a lot of origin story work with my clients to help them understand, when I confront a coaching resistant behavior that normal techniques are just not going to penetrate. I have to go back deeper to where the roots are.
I like that term.
So yeah, and then now there has been all the org systems people are mostly my org psychology training. So I go back to a lot of the origins of that work when I studied. That's where I studied to understand that you're looking at very complex interconnected systems that an org chart's not going to tell you the story of.
Yep. And those of us that are may have been in our careers harder to coach for one reason or another. What is it that you're usually finding? Is it taking it back to like inner child stuff? Is it stuff ego? Is it what are you finding, and how are you like mitigating and turning that around?
Oh gosh, it's all kinds of things. Well, so I mean, it's basically all of us have behaviors and origin stories that that we use to self-protect, right? We learn these things early on, and there's just narratives that keep repeating themselves, and problems that keep repeating themselves because we haven't addressed that original narrative. So here's an example. So I was coaching a guy who was super affable and likable, and people adored him.